All right, we're going to go ahead and start. Welcome to the masterclass called Creating and Maintaining a Career in Music. This is hosted by the UNA School of the Arts Student Leaders Board. This year we created a plan to help engage students at our university in the arts and give them opportunities to do these events through a pandemic, even though we're living through a pandemic. So our idea was to have 4 Zoom masterclasses. We had one back in October with Abraham Rowe, who's a photographer in the Florence area. And today we have a panel with Gabrielle Fuqua, Evan Hammond, and Dr. Eric Kirkman talking about creating and maintaining a career in music. A little bit about the artist, they'll tell you, but a little bit I want to say is Dr. Kirkman is a very successful music educator and performer. Evan Hammond is a very successful performer. He does mostly opera, I believe. He can correct me when he talks about it. And then Gabrielle Fuqua does opera and crossover and musical theater. So I'll have them talk to you in a bit, but if you have any questions, we can have a question and answer period at the end. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start. So we'll start with Gabrielle. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your field? What do you do? All about that.
Well, first, let me say hi. I graduated from UNA in 2017. So there's a lot of familiar faces, I think, but some that I'm not really familiar with you. So hello. My name is Gabrielle Fuqua. I mostly do crossover stuff. I sing some opera. I sing some musical theater. I recently graduated with my master's from the University of Kentucky. And I'm a proud UNA alum. Yeah. So thank y'all for having me. I'm excited to answer some of your questions and hear from my fellow panelists. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Gabby. Evan, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, what your field is, what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So hi, y'all. My name is Evan Hammond. I actually graduated with Gabrielle, in 2017. And I am, so I'm an opera singer primarily. So it's fun, it's cool. I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years. I graduated from UNA in 2017, and then right after that, went and got my master's at Louisiana State University. And after that, I spent a year doing a young artist program in Shreveport, Louisiana, with Shreveport Opera. And now I'm a freelance opera singer and just performing frequently, prior to COVID anyway. That's pretty much me.
Thanks, Evan. Dr. Kirkman, will you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your field? What do you do?
All right. First of all, I'll say good afternoon, everybody. Glad to be here. Let me tell you, the other 2 panelists, I've heard both of them sing before, and they can sing the chrome off of a trailer hitch. I'm just going to tell you, they are amazing performers. I guess I'm the old head of the crew. I actually graduated with a bachelor's in music education in 1997 from the University of North Alabama. I stayed on and pursued a master's degree and got my master's in of the arts and education, with an emphasis in music in 2000. From there, I went on to actually serve as an elementary music teacher. I did that, loved that. They actually transferred me over to run the choral program at Sheffield High School, Sheffield Junior High. So I was a choral director for about 3.5 years. And then I transitioned over and became the band director. And actually, for one of those years, I was the band and choral director. I actually ran both programs for about 1.5 years. And then I took on the band program and was the band director for about 12 years at Sheffield High School. After that, I moved into administration, where I became a vice principal and then a principal at Sheffield High School, and then principal at Sheffield Junior High. And my current job is I'm actually the director at Kilby Laboratory School here at UNA. So my career has kind of come full circle, where I'm actually back at UNA now. But aside from that, from my musical standpoint, I'm also a professional musician on the side. I have a band we're called the Kirkman Combo, where we perform many different places. We perform weddings, banquets, different venues and whatnot, as well as I serve as the worship pastor at my church here in Florence.
Thank you, Dr. Kirkman. Moving on to our next question for Gabrielle. How did you begin your career, and what did you do to nurture your career early on?
Well, for me, I actually started in church. So when I was about 3, my granny would like play piano. She played at St. James Missionary Baptist Church here in Florence, and would have me sing all the time. And from some home videos I've seen, I was really uncomfortable. I didn't really want to sing at first. But as she kept pushing me to get up and sing, I just kind of fell in love with it. So, you know, throughout, I guess, like elementary and middle school, I was always in choir and like show choir and stuff. But I don't think the true nurturing of everything started until I got to go to UNA and pursue my degree program in vocal performance. Sorry. I think that having such an amazing voice teacher there, Dr. Bostic Brown was my teacher there. Having her and Miss Karen Cantrell and just that whole faculty and that whole, I don't know, just that experience, I think was my nurturing for what I wanted to do. I started with just being strictly musical theater, just because that was like, I feel like all I knew when I was a freshman. I didn't really know a lot about the classical realm, I guess, and like opera music until, I want to say maybe the middle of my sophomore year. So I started singing both, and I was like, whoa, wait, like I don't have to just do one avenue of this. I can do both. And of course, Dr. Bostic Brown was really encouraging with that too. So yeah, I think that's pretty much where I started and kind of how I got into wanting to sing professionally. So.
Great, thank you for that, Gabby. Evan, how did you begin your career? What did you do early on to nurture it?
Similar to Gabrielle, I come from a family where singing was kind of in my household a lot. I didn't do a lot of it, but my older sister is a singer, and my dad was a really good singer, mostly in church settings. And so I was kind of always around it, but I was more of a band kid in high school. I played trombone for years. And then went to UNA, planned to be a pre-med major actually, and did that for 2 years. Worked in a hospital. I was kind of more along that route. And I just started singing in choir just for, you know, scholarship money and to have an experience that I didn't have. I went to Lexington High School, which is a really small school out in the county, no choir program. And so when I got to UNA, it was the first time I got to sing in a choir, and I loved it. It was the most incredible thing. And I realized one day after like doing all of my studies in biology and everything that the best part of my day, every day, the only thing that was really giving me joy in college at the time was singing in choir. And I decided to minor in music, didn't know what I was doing at all. But I can't say enough about how lucky you all are to have the Browns at UNA, because they completely changed my life. And specifically, I studied with Dr. Bostic Brown, and she was amazing, and kind of discovered that I had a hidden talent. I mean, at first I was really, really rough. I mean, it was not anything great at all. And she just kind of discovered that I had something to say, and she really pushed me in a direction. And I think early on, what I did the most was just really kind of dive in, all in anyway. I didn't know anything about opera. I didn't know anything about young artist programs. I didn't know anything about how to get a manager, anything like that. But when I decided to sing, I just, you know, took her as a resource and really would sing as often as I could, as much as I could. And, you know, after that, it just kind of took off. I mean, once you make connections, that's what the business is all about anyway. And she was my first connection into the business. And Dr. Brown gave me a lot of performing opportunities. And without them, I would not be doing this today at all. So that's it.
Great. Thanks, Evan. Dr. Kirkman, how did you begin your career? What did you do to nurture your career early on?
Well, my music career actually started when I was about 4 years old. My mother is a phenomenal singer. My father's actually a musician. My father's a trumpet player, as well as a keyboard player. Very similar to Gabby, grew up in the church. So music was around me all the time. But I think at 4 years old is where I really, I think, discovered my gift. Dad left his trumpet sitting around, and I picked it up and I just started playing it. And I never looked back. And so getting those opportunities throughout school, being in plays, joining the band. I was a band kid, 7th grade all the way through high school. I was drum major my senior year in marching band as well. But I also love singing. And so that was coupled a lot of times. I had conflicts between band and choir. And so a lot of times teachers would make accommodations for me to be able to participate in both programs. And so, you know, who knew way back then that would actually be a part of my career when I started teaching, because I actually had to run both programs simultaneously at one time. So having that vocal background and that instrumental background, and they really coupled each other, because the vocal side of it really helped with my ear training and pitch and understanding harmonies and different things. So that really helped with arrangements and things when I would arrange music for my marching band and my concert bands and whatnot. So just having that early start as a child and being surrounded by music in the church and with my parents, that was really the beginnings, I think, of my career. How I nurtured it, I was just surrounding myself with musicians. I surrounded myself with good musicians. I was dating a girl in high school who bought me my first Wynton Marsalis tape. And I'm thinking, yes, I said cassette tape. That's how old I am. And it was one of those deals where it's like, dude, if I can just sound like him, you know, and so I would try to intentionally find the professionals who were getting paid to do it, and I'd try to sound like them. And so that's probably the best way that I could say I nurtured that. And I mean, and that sticks with me even today. I mean, I'm a elementary school principal, and I'm sitting here in my office and I still have my trumpet. Like I play all the time because that's just a part of who I am. So.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kirkman.
Sure.
This kind of takes us to a little bit of a different part. We talked about nourishing your careers and how you did this, but what do you feel like Gabrielle, what do you feel like the turning point in your career was? Like, at what point did you feel like, this is what I need to do, this is what I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I will say that I think that point for artists, or maybe just for me, but I know a lot of artists that have that point happen a lot of different times in their life. But I think the most significant time that happened was when, when was it? 2017, I went to Orpheus, and that semester was just like, I don't know, you have those semesters, they're just like, you feel like you're just in a dirt trying to get through. And I that was having one of those semesters, and I had gotten accepted into the Orpheus vocal competition and just went, and wasn't really anticipating to win it or anything like that. I was just like, I just feel so happy to be able to go and sing. That's all I wanted to do was just to go and, like, you know, hear other people and like share my talent as well. And I think they were going through like everyone who had won their stuff, or like, you know, the different places and everything. And I was listening. I was like, oh, okay, they didn't call my name. That's okay. I just was happy to go sing and, you know, wear a pretty dress and all the different stuff. And then for first place, they were like, oh, Gabrielle Fuqua. And I was like, oh, who was that? Because I just wasn't, you know, I was there. I was there, but not, you know, that wasn't the purpose that I felt like, you know, for that day. That's not what I went to do. I went to go sing. And I don't know, being up there and seeing that, you know, I had touched so many people, and I had made, you know, a couple of, you know, networking, you know, connections with people and stuff. I think that was like the moment where I was like, wow, like this to some capacity is supposed to be in my life. Because I don't know, it brings me so much joy. And that day, I think, was like one of the most amazing days of my life, honestly. So I think that day was the day I was like, yeah, this is what I want, and this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So
thank you for sharing that. I really enjoyed that. Evan, what about you? What was the turning point in your career? You feel like it?
Yeah, it's so similar and so interesting that Gabrielle brings that up, because I was in the audience actually for that performance that she gave, and it was insane. She sang My Man's Gone Now and just crushed it. So really exciting. And I remember, you know, for me, it's kind of similar. Competitions are really affirming for singers sometimes. They can be really affirming, or they can be really have the opposite effect and make you want to quit, which a lot of people do. But yeah, so The first competition I ever did was Nats, actually, which is, just at the Alabama level, small. But I remember I had been working really hard and I was really trying to get my technique sound, and things started to click a little bit. And so I actually entered Nats that year. I think this was my second year, so I was sophomore level, but I was actually like a junior or a senior at the time. And I sang really well. And surprisingly kept getting through the next rounds and the next round and the next round. And then finally I got to the finals and I got to sing in front of everybody when you're at Nats, and we were at Samford University at the time. It was super exciting, and I ended up winning, and my jaw just hit the floor when I actually got first place. I was shocked. And that was really, crazy. And that was kind of the moment where I started to believe, okay, maybe you're actually better at this than most people. Like maybe you're, above average of a singer, and maybe you can actually make a career. Because in order to make a career in singing, you do have to be at a higher level than most people who sing. And so you need that affirmation early on that you can do something special, that you're talented. It's not a prerequisite. People who start and don't do competitions well do not always go on to have great careers, nor if you don't do well in a competition, it's not necessary, but it was really affirming to me. And then also I see that Mr. Flowers is in here. Hi, Mr. Flowers. Yeah. So Mr. Flowers is, if you haven't had Mr. Flowers as a professor, he's an amazing professor. But he was a really great music history teacher, and I loved his class so much. And one time he actually took me to see, me and a couple of other students, to see Eugene Onegin at in Huntsville, which was like the Met HD broadcast. And I remember seeing that opera, and that was actually one of the first few that I had seen all the way through. And if you don't know Eugene Onegin, it's a Russian opera, baritone lead, and I was immediately just drawn to it and just so inspired by it, and knew that, I had already got accepted into grad school. I was really excited about opera, and that really just got me so excited and so much. That was the first Met show I think I had seen, and that was amazing. And who would have thought that literally 2 years later I got to perform that exact role in Russian at LSU. And so it was really amazing to me. But having somebody like Mr. Flowers there to really encourage me was really huge too at the time. So the people you surround yourself with can really do a lot in how your career takes off. So
Thanks, Evan. I really enjoyed that response. Dr. Kirkman, what about you? What was the turning point in your career, like as an educator or as a musician? Touch on all that, please.
Yeah, so my turning point happened really young. I had like two turning points, if you will. So my first turning point came when I was about a sophomore in high school. I was doing really well in marching band coming in and I went to a pretty big high school in Florida. I'm from Panama City. And so in my trumpet section at that time, we had about 20 trumpets. And so coming in as a freshman, it was kind of a given. You're going to play third part, you go sit down there with and I was able to come in and play first part as a freshman. So sophomore year came around and you couldn't tell me anything. And so my drum major, I was doing something I wasn't supposed to do, and my drum major actually told me to run laps for insubordination or whatever, and I refused to run them. And so my band director, very not so kindly, kicked me out of band. I was done. Kicked me out of band. Said, "You're done. Go home. Don't come back." And going home, knowing that I wasn't in band anymore was probably the lowest moment as a child at that point in my life, just simply because something that I loved so much was taken away from me. And so I had to not only that, but then face two parents and tell them that I had got kicked out of band for being stupid. And so my mother brought me back up to the school the next day, and she went to the band director's office and she told him, "If you will give him one more chance, he will be the best band student you've ever had." So she went to kind of bat on my behalf, and he agreed. And so I joined band, and literally I tried to be the best band student that he ever had. Not to say that I was, But I tried. I'll just put it that way. So I say all that to say this, you know, sometimes when things are taken away from you, you don't really truly see their value until they're gone. So the opportunities that you have as a performer, as a musician, getting to kind of hone your craft, I encourage you to take advantage of those things, because you never know when it could potentially be taken away from you. Think about all the folks that have been furloughed due to the pandemic, and knowing that those passions have been put on hold and taken away from them. My second biggest turning point, I can say, the one that really projected me and propelled me into my band career, came actually my second year as a band director. First year as a band director, we went to our very first marching competition. I had never been to one, really didn't know what it was about. I know we had to put our show together. We had to go out there. They judged it, gave me some scores, and that was it. So my first competition, we performed that morning, and awards is that night. So I unfortunately couldn't go to awards ceremony because I was actually singing the national anthem at an Atlanta Hawks game that night over in Huntsville. And so I wasn't even there for awards. And I just remember getting a phone call. It was a voice message on my phone, and it was my students just screaming and crying, "We won, we won, oh my gosh, we got best in class." And I'm like, yeah, what does that mean? I really didn't fully embrace and know what that meant until I got back to school and saw the pride in their eyes in doing that. But the turning point came the next year when the students thought that they were going to get that again, and they didn't put in the work. So to sit at that competition and then to see the disappointment in their faces when they got beat. They knew they were supposed to get best in class because they got it the year before. Little did they realize that they had to work harder because bands were coming after them for beating them the previous year. So the turning point came that night when I looked those kids in the face and I saw their disappointment, and some were crying and all that. And I promised them, I made a promise to them. I said, if you will work hard and do the things I tell you to do, I will work as hard as I can to make sure that you will never feel this way again. I said, you got to meet me halfway. And that was a turning point for not only me as a musician and as a professional, but as a band, because that year thereafter, there were very few competitions that we did not get best in class. And I'm not talking about band, I'm talking about best in class, dance line, drum line, majorette, you know. It got to the point to where they were calling out scores, and people would call out our school name before the scores would even come out. So that was a turning point for us to see and feel those moments of disappointment, and then finding out what you had inside of you that was going to be willing to do something about it.
Thank you, Dr. Kirkman. I enjoyed that. I think that was a really good take on what I was asking you for. What was Gabrielle, what was the biggest struggle as yourself as an artist, as a musician, and how did you eventually come over that? Are you still working through that? Tell me a little bit about that.
I think this is going to sound away, but I don't mean, just stay with me, and I promise it won't sound away. It's coming out of my mouth. It's not that I don't believe in the struggle of being an artist that looks like me, or being in a field that, you know, is not necessarily all the time diverse or anything like that. But I think as an artist, and where I am now with the pandemic happening and just being out of, you know, graduate school, and, you know, like kind of like similarly to what Dr. Kirkman was saying, like certain things being stripped from you that are outside of your control in a certain way. I think that the struggle's real, but I don't think I don't really believe in, you know, I guess like marinating in past struggles. Does that make sense? That may not make sense, but I think that anything or all the struggles that I've had before, like, I mean, I've been told a lot more no's than I've been told yeses. And I think that sometimes, like Evan was saying, it can be really discouraging to be told no or to be rejected in this field, especially with performance, when it's something that you love to do and that you don't really necessarily want to let go of. But, you know, I mean, I've been told things about like my body to like my race to not necessarily the way I sang, but how I looked when I was singing, those types of things. And for a tiny section of my life in graduate school, those things start to really bother me. But I don't know, I'm just a firm believer that just because it's not attainable at this moment, it doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible. And I've always been someone who has had to, number one, acknowledge the rejection and like take it for what it is, but know that just because one opportunity is not for me in that moment, that doesn't mean that something else will not come. So that's been something as far as struggling through, you know, achieving this dream that I've had for so long. That's been something I've had to kind of reframe the way I think about. And I think that it's important to know, like, especially as musicians, we're all so intelligent. I mean, we have to take all these classes and like, you know, basically be our own business and learn about that aspect of performance and stuff. And I think that, I don't know, I'm just a believer that my mind or your mind or anyone's mind, it's about shifting the focus. So I think that if you, I mean, it hurts to be rejected from programs or from auditions or anything like that, because, you know, this is what we love to do. It's like, you know, our passion. It's like our life. But I think that you can't marinate in it too long, or else you essentially will lose so many other opportunities that will make you happy in the end. I don't know if that answered your question or not. I kind of went on a tangent, but I think that what I'm trying to say is, yes, there have been moments where I've not felt like the best artist that I wanted to be, or felt like I really wanted an opportunity and didn't receive it. But I think, I don't know that we artists are resilient, and I think we should continue to stay that way, especially with COVID and everything. So that's all I have to say.
I enjoy that a lot. I think a lot of times as musicians, and like you were saying, loving something, it's so hard to not let, whenever you fail, not let that define you. You have to really make an active decision to stay encouraged and stay pushing yourself forward so you can do your art and grow as an artist, like you were saying. I really appreciated that answer.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Evan, what about you? What was the biggest struggle in your career so far, and how did you overcome it? Have you overcome it?
Coronavirus. No, I mean, honestly, it's a huge, that's a huge halt to a career. When you're talking about like performing, and when you're like me and you make all of your money, you are full-time performing, that's very detrimental to what we do. Now, I mean, I'm fortunate because I have some like virtual opportunities, and I have other means of income too. And like, you know, you're flexible and it's fine. But like, I'm kind of joking when I say coronavirus, but it's, you know, it really is a big struggle right now. So we're still going through it. But I mean, I'll kind of tune it back a little bit so that we can kind of escape from COVID reality, and kind of say, you know, I think there's a couple of things I want to say about the struggle. And, you know, one of the things that comes to mind for me is when I first left UNA, I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to get my master's. Still kind of didn't really know what I was doing. And I was doing the opera Falstaff, and I was singing Ford in that, which is a pretty demanding role. And literally the week of production, we were about to open in a week, and I got a call saying my dad had a heart attack, and made it home just in time, but didn't get to see him, didn't get to talk to him, and he passed away that weekend. And so that was a really huge moment in my life. And I think for so many artists, there's a story like that somewhere. There's a story about personal loss or personal reflection that happens. And for me, that was, you know, having this opera happen right then, but have to go to Alabama, you know, do a funeral, have all of that happen, have an extremely emotional response that week. And then literally 2 days after the funeral, I opened Falstaff at LSU and had to jump straight in and start singing again. And literally right after that, I had 2 auditions in Chicago. And right after that, I had another gig. And so like, it kept going and kept going and kept going. But during that struggle specifically, you know, I learned a lot about what I wanted for my own life too, you know, and that was huge. Even like just coming into terms with like being a gay man in this industry. And like at the time I was not out or not open with people about anything. That's huge in your artistry. You know, that's very big to come to terms with. So when you have all of these, as an artist, when you have all of these emotional qualities, of these emotional things that happen in your life, and then you come full circle and you do a lot of like personal reflection, you know, that's what really defines your career, I think, in so many ways. So there's been plenty of struggles, and just like Gabrielle said, the rejection is huge, but it doesn't even compare to what the personal loss you may have along the way that doesn't even have to do with music. I mean, it's literally just life can just be the struggle, to be honest. So I'd say that's my answer.
Thank you for sharing that, Evan. I appreciate that. Dr. Kirkman, what about you? What was the biggest struggle in your career, and how did you overcome that?
For me, in my music career, one of the biggest struggles was trying to convince others around me to see the value in what I was trying to do. Others around me trying to convince them of the value of the gift of music. And sometimes I was very controversial in doing that. I never forget a football game. Our band was kind of notorious for our football team could be getting beat 100-0, but everybody would leave happy because the band had it rocking. I mean, that was just our mantra, you know? And I just recall a particular game where we were playing, and apparently the coaches couldn't hear or something. And so they literally turned around and just like screamed at us, like almost dog cussed us out in front of everybody. So we stopped playing for the entire half. We didn't play it when they scored. We didn't even play the fight song. And people were commenting. It's like all of a sudden people started coming up. Hey, are you guys okay? Are you guys going to play? So it's like their attention wasn't even on the game anymore. They missed what we were providing in that moment. And so that struggle of trying to convince people to see the value of who we are and what we were as a music program, as an entity, you know, I realized that I wasn't going to win that fight from the side that I was sitting on. And so that was one of the main reasons why I went into administration, because I knew as an administrator, I would be the one making the decisions on the scheduling. One of my biggest plights is that I would have a great marching band because they needed that for football. But when football season was over, the band didn't matter. And so a lot of times they would cut half my class that I needed for concert band or that I needed for jazz band. And so I knew if I could be the one that could control the scheduling, I could help the band program. And so that was, you know, I was very intentional with that. And that proved beneficial for a while. I feel for band directors that don't have that relationship or that power, I should say, to use their leverage to make sure that they're getting everything they need for their programs. And so that's probably for me the biggest struggle, just in a school setting, is not having control of the resources and things that I needed that I know would benefit and grow the band program. It wasn't important in the eyes of a lot of folks. And so trying to prove your validity and your worth was a constant struggle.
I think it's interesting that all of you commented about something about definition of ourselves as artists, or this inside idea of what we are as a musician and the struggle there and the validity of it, like Dr. Kirkman said, because as we grow as an artist, I think it's really important that we find our definition on ourselves. And if that definition is going into something that's toxic, we need to be aware of that. And I think that's important. I'm really appreciative of all you for answering that one. Here's shifting gears a little bit from struggle, but in the same kind of idea of it being a struggle. How do you maintain your career? What do you do every day, every week, every month to hold yourself accountable? I feel like as artists, we have to, especially as freelance artists, we have to be aware of what we're doing and how we're keeping ourselves accountable for growing as an artist. Gabrielle, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Can I answer that question first?
Oh, yeah, you can. Go ahead.
I'm just going to change it up. You know, in answering your question, how do you maintain career? You know, what do you do? My advice to everybody: look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself this one basic question. Are you ready? Do you want to eat?
That's true. Yeah.
Honestly.
That's
I mean,
that's very true.
The bottom line, we can talk about passion. We can talk about, you know, what music does for us and emotionally and how it touches the soul of man. That ain't gonna pay your light bill. So if you don't have any other drive to sharpen your tool, to master your craft, you got to do what you have to do to take care of yourself. If you got a family, you got to do what you got to do to take care of your family. You know, even when I was younger, you know, I had to in the back of my mind, I hated rehearsing, but I knew the benefits of rehearsing would make me a better musician. And not only a better musician, but then I realized that I now am in competition with other folks who are trying to do the exact same thing that I'm doing. So, you know, that's a very real question. When you don't feel like practicing, when you don't feel like going to rehearsal, when you don't feel like going that extra mile, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself a question. Do you want to eat?
Yeah, that's
like
exactly
that.
right.
Totally.
I mean, it comes with, you know, I think it's just about, I know we've kind of been on this theme of like, you know, self-validity, but that's really what it is. Do you want to eat? Do you want to have a full life or a fulfilled life? Like it's very much so like, it's up honestly to yourself. I mean, something that I've been kind of saying to myself here lately, I mean, if don't nobody got me, I got me. I mean, and it's not to say that you don't have to have a support system. I think that's incredibly important too, when you want to pursue a career like this, because it is so hard and there are pitfalls, and not even just on an emotional level, but, you know, finances and, you know, figuring out how to like do things like build a resume and build a website and those types of things. But I do think that like you have to really know that you're worthy of it and do what it takes within reason to, you know, be successful in it. So Dr. Kirkman, thank you. I'm going to write that on my affirmation wall. Do you want to eat? That's true. It's very true.
I like that a lot. Yeah, Gabrielle, you're free to say anything else you want to, but if you don't want to say anything else, I can let Evan say some stuff.
Oh yeah, I said what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Go ahead, Evan.
No, I love that, because honestly, I think that when it comes to arts and things like that, we get so attached to the passion and so much about you have to just worship the art form that you're a part of. And at the end of the day, you got to make money. I mean, you have to, it's a business. Like, literally, I mean, I'm so involved in the opera industry and it's a business at the end of the day. You know, what roles am I going to get cast in? I have to literally tailor my audition package. And with an audition, I'm just going to talk a little bit about opera right now because that's kind of my area of expertise. But, you know, how I maintain a career, just like going back to the main question. Right now, it's a little bit difficult, but, you know, I'm lucky. I have a manager. I have other contacts and stuff. And so they're still scheduling. And I don't want to paint a doom and gloom picture for you all, because if you're interested in going into the arts and music, pursue that 100%. I do firmly believe that it will come back after COVID. It may take time and it may look way different after it's over, but, you know, it's still going to be there. I hope so. So, you know, like I have to literally tailor my audition package to so specific voice types. You know, I'm a lyric baritone. Not only am I a lyric baritone, I'm a light lyric baritone. So I literally have to pick 5 arias, 5 pieces that show me off the best and that fit the repertoire that I would sing. And, you know, I take those to every house audition that I do, every young artist program audition that I do. And I market myself as, you know, this character, this Figaro, or, you know, this Count, or whatever it is. I have to literally be so specific because at the end of the day, it's business and you have to make money and you have to do, even you may have a dream to go sing Rodolfo. I'm not a tenor, but if I was going to go sing Rodolfo, but at the end of the day, I can't do that. I have to put myself into a box, unfortunately, of what, you know, I can perform. It's still very fulfilling, but you have to treat it like a business on some level. And then I would also kind of add, not to ramble too much, but, you know, maintaining a career involves really, for me, doing a lot of the groundwork yourself. Even if you have a manager, even if you've done the big programs, if you've done everything, you really have to be flexible and be very willing, for me anyway, to travel, to do auditions, to up and move a lot, you know, which is something I'm really kind of starting to realize I don't know if I want to do that much of in the future. But early on especially, you know, you've got to be willing to put yourself out there and take risks as far as auditioning goes, and do young artist programs, which take a long time. Sometimes they're a year, 2 years, summers. So, you know, to hold myself accountable anyway, you know, that's what I'm doing. I'm literally answering what Dr. Kirkman said and what Gabrielle said. Like, I love it, and that's why I do it, but I do have to eat. I do have to make a career. And so, yeah, I think that's a great answer. So
real quick, let me add one more caveat to that. So, you know, there's a difference in having a career and maintaining a career. And a lot of the stuff that Evan hit, man, that's you're spot on, dude. And you mentioned the word professional. Being professional, that right there will maintain and sustain a career. Being professional, it encompasses so many things. It's more than just what your resume looks like. It's the intangibles. It's the showing up early. Notice I didn't say on time. It's the showing up early. It's the one thing that artists sometimes forget to do is they forget to do the research on their audience. In other words, they forget to know who they're performing for. And so when you're in a situation like me, sometimes like with my band, you know, we play wedding receptions all the time. Well, you can imagine we have a wide variety of clients. And so we always try to be intentional of asking them what they want and who we're playing for. So that then affects not only what we play, because there's some things on our set list that wouldn't fit certain audiences. It also reflects how we dress when we show up for certain gigs and whatnot. So the intangibles that go along with being a professional, those things are so important because those are the things that will carry you and that will be carried word of mouth to other potential venues or other potential clients. When your reputation for professionalism goes before you, that will truly, truly help you maintain and sustain a successful career. So make sure you got those things intact.
Mm-hmm.
These are all some really great comments. I really enjoyed that question. I enjoyed you all's reality of it, because as an artist, you have to be real. I know a lot of us, we like to live in this idea of we are an artist. We have this all these great ideas. We're all so creative, but it's very we have to think about the reality of the situation. And I enjoyed all three of yours perspectives on that. Our final question before we have a little bit of a Q&A at the end: if you could go back in time and tell yourself anything, if you could give yourself any advice, what would that advice entail, and what would you tell yourself? And anyone can start this, so whoever feels comfortable.
I'll go ahead with this one. I would say, if I could tell myself advice going forward, it's that, and I've done a pretty good job of this, I feel like, but overall it's, invest in the relationships of the people around you in your field and outside of your field too. But, really, you can't do this without support. You just can't. Mm-hmm. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it to get on that stage and perform and have the most amazing feeling of winning a competition or doing anything if you have no one to fall back, no one to come back to celebrate with. It's not worth it. It's really so important to just invest in the people around you and form long relationships, lasting relationships. These people are going to support you, my family's been super instrumental in me being able to do this career. My boyfriend is a singer, a really successful opera singer, so he understands it too. And it's great to have that support. And, and I have lots of friends in the business who are super successful and help me along the way too. So it's important to make those careers. And also, I would just say to tell myself, there's no pressure here. You can always stop. If you don't do well, or even if you do well and you don't like it, we are all, as artists, I feel like, intelligent, resourceful people, and there are other things you can do, and there are other things. It doesn't have to be a life sentence if you choose the path. You have to be smart about your finances, and you have to be very conscientious of what decisions you're making along the way, but take the pressure off yourself and dive in while you're in college. Dive in while you have the freedom of being single or being without a family or being whatever. Dive in, yeah, sure. But also remember that you are in control of your life, and if you want to change, you can. And if you want to do something else, that's completely fine. That doesn't make you less of an artist. That doesn't make you less of a talented individual, but you have options, and your world does not have to ride on your talent. So don't ever assume that going forward. That's what I would tell myself back then. And I love what I do now. I mean, I'm fully in it. I'm involved. I love being an opera singer. But I think that there was so much pressure that I put on myself for it to be my world when I was in undergrad. This was everything to me. And I think that that's useful to help you really, have a good work ethic, but there's just a healthier way of thinking about it. So.
Gabrielle, Dr. Kirkman, either of you can go when you're ready.
I'll go. I think I would tell myself two things. And it sounds really basic, but to take my time and to be myself are the two biggest things. And when I say take my time, not necessarily like, you know, become stagnant, but just to take my time. I used to think that there was like a certain timeline that I had to follow for anything, like in like with graduating. Like I was like, oh, if I don't graduate in 4 years, like it's and I used to get so like overwhelmed setting these, I guess, like unrealistic expectations, not because I wasn't working hard enough, but because that's just not where my journey was supposed to go. And I don't know, I think especially right now, like, yes, there's a lot of uncertainty with the pandemic and what opera and performance will look like at the end of all this, but I do think it's important just to take your time. I mean, we don't have to have all the answers to every single question right now. And I think that would be one of the biggest things I would tell myself, because I used to be similarly to Evan. Like I was like, if I don't eat, sleep, and breathe this, you know, constant giving of myself for, you know, I would think about, like, I was like 19 thinking about what I was supposed to be doing when I was like 30. Like, no, I'm 19 years old. Like, I don't have to think so far ahead to where, you know, I'm stressing myself out because I'm setting these unrealistic expectations for myself. And that ties in with the second thing I would tell myself, which would be just to be myself. I can't tell you how many times and I think artists just do this because, you know, deep down we're actors and actresses and stuff like that. But to kind of manufacture yourself to present a version of yourself that's not necessarily who you are is, I don't know, it's like self-disrespect in a way. Sorry, I don't mean to be heavy. I'm just trying to be, you know, honest. But I feel like for a long time, honestly, I only figured this out about myself maybe when I first got to graduate school, about, you know, who I wanted to be and how I had kind of deterred from the path of like my own, I don't know, just my own individuality in the madness of what is this industry which with everything kind of tells, you know, female bodied folks and, you know, male bodied folks how to look and act and be perceived, when in reality, all you really have to do is be yourself. And like, I think that I firmly believe that the rest will kind of fall into place. So all that to say, those are the two things that I would tell myself. If I could go back and talk to my 19-year-old self, that's what I would tell them. So
I enjoy that authenticity, Gabrielle. I think it's very important to be authentic to ourselves and who they are. And Evan touched on that a bit, but I really enjoy that. Dr. Kirkman, anything from you?
So being one of the older ones here, you know, I would go back and tell my younger self, thank you. I would go back and tell my younger self, thank you, because everything that I am today is because of who I've been, good and bad. And so I think that the perspective that I have on life now was all being cultivated and molded through all of the stuff that I was going through as a younger person. You know, and I realized that, you know, when you talk about going back and telling your younger self something, that's kind of cheating in my viewpoint, because I think that the obstacles and the adversity that you go through, all of those things are by design to define who you will become. You know, a wise person once told me that a grindstone, if you know anything about a grindstone, it has two purposes. It's designed to either sharpen things up or polish them up, or it's designed to grind things down to nothing. But it all depends on what you're made of. And so life is that grindstone, and life will do one of two things to you. Life experiences will either polish you and sharpen you up, or it will grind you down to nothing. But it's so those moments that you will ultimately define and find out what you're truly made of. And so I'd go back and tell my younger self, thank you for being made of something that you know doesn't look at rejection as somebody, you know, tossing me to the side or devaluing who I already know I am. thank you for giving me the capacity to shake them haters off, when they shut doors in my face, because I've learned that when God closes doors, he might be opening a window over here. And it took my mother to help me realize that everything that people offer you, all glitter is not everything that glitters ain't gold, is what she would tell me. I've had some wonderful opportunities presented to me from a musical standpoint. I had an opportunity to do a European tour with a very, very famous musician. And the byproduct of that would be me having to drop out of college. Well, if I would have dropped out of college, if I had not fulfilled the promise that I made to her to get my college degree, I look back and think, where would I be? And so, I go back and I tell myself, thank you for maintaining and holding true to your word to be the best person that you can be and the best musician that you can be, because again, that's what my mother promised my band director. And that's what I tried to work on to become, even as a man now, today. So.
Thank you, Dr. Kirkman.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm now going to open it to a Q&A. If anybody has any questions, if you have any questions, you can just turn your mic on and ask.
Hi. I actually have a quick question. It's actually for Dr. Kirkman.
Yes.
I am a music education major, and I've had some interest in doing administration. And I was wondering how you kind of balance your career in music and keeping up with what you want to do and being a full-time principal.
Woo, that's a tough one. So what was helpful for me is, of course, my bachelor's and my master's was in music, but I received my doctorate in instructional leadership. And so I was very intentional when the opportunities presented themselves to plug into other areas in the school that necessarily other teachers looked at me like, okay, what are you doing here? You're just the music guy. Go play the B flat scale or something, where I was there because what I found out is in my music appreciation classes, they would just dump anybody in there. You know how that goes. But what I would do with those classes, I would start making connection with those same students. And I realized that some of those students had reading deficiencies. I realized some of those students had, issues trying to fill out college applications and different things. So I became more than just a musician or more than just a music teacher for those kids. And so my advice to you is, in finding that balance, is understand that your role as a music educator goes far beyond teaching them the B flat scale. I often lecture across the street to the education classes. And one of the things I always remind them is that you don't teach curriculum, you teach children, you teach people, you teach kids. And so if you can connect and find those areas where you can be the most benefit to them in life, not just in band, that's where you'll see it. And even for me going into administration, I was able to find that niche, and I realized that I had a passion not only for changing people's lives with music, but just changing people's lives in other ways and helping them and showing them just better alternatives to life. I hope that answered your question.
Anybody else have any questions?
Okay. How many other music education majors do we have? Can y'all raise your hand? How many do we have? Oh, y'all poor souls. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Look, it's an amazing career. I am, let's see, this is 2020. So I now am 8 years removed from the band room. I'm 8 years removed from the band room. And I still have students that I taught my first, second, and third year as a band director that will stop me in the mall. That will stop me in the mall and introduce me to their husbands or introduce me to their wives. And they'll say, this is my high school band director. This is the one that changed my life. This is the one that kept me from dropping out. This is the one that, took me to my first drum corps show. This is the one that took me to my first whatever, so just laying the groundwork for people's lives and that influence. And the reality of it is you're never going to see how far your level of influence will go. You're never going to see that. And that's okay. That's okay. But just know that you did everything that you can do to plant those seeds and touching those lives. That's all that's really required of you. and it's up to them to cultivate those seeds that you plant.
Dr.
Great.
Kirkman, I wanted to say, I admire you so much. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just telling Dr. Kirkman that I admired him very much.
Thank you. You know, I admire you too, and you probably don't realize that, but I just hearing your story and knowing, you know, I've watched you grow up in this area over the years, and so it's really awesome. Evan, I remember that weekend when your father passed. I remember that. I remember praying for you in our small group at church, because I know you've done some things with us at Highland. So I remember that weekend very vividly, and I'm thinking, man, this is the most focused and just, I've never seen tenacity on that level that I saw with you. And guys, that's just a part of it. That's just a part of who we are. We're the weirdos, but we're the weirdos for a reason, because everybody can't do what we do. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Everybody can't do what we do, man. I mean, seriously, everybody can't do what we do. And so it is an honor. It is an honor to be a musician. It is an honor to be a music educator. It is an honor to instill the things that you have the opportunity, because, you know, people don't see the value in us. I encourage you, the next time you get a chance, watch a movie and put it on mute. Just don't seem the same. Mm-hmm. Think about a football game with no band. Just don't seem the same. People don't really value what we are and who we are until we're not there. Mm-hmm. So keep striving. Keep striving.
Thank you, Dr. Kirkman. Gabrielle or Evan, do you guys have any closing thoughts before we finish up the masterclass?
Yes, please stay safe. Please wash your hands. Please social distance. Please do all the things that I know we're all tired of hearing, but yeah, please take care of yourselves. And just know, like Dr. Kirkman was saying, like the arts have survived so much already. So we will be hopefully good to go sooner than later. It was nice to get to talk to all of y'all, and thank you again for having us. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, I would just say to all of you, I don't know if any of you are like vocal performance or interested in opera at all or anything like that, but if you have any specific questions like about opera or the industry or anything like that, or maybe you're trying to figure out what your next step would be past COVID anyway, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure they can share my contact information with you, but have a lot of knowledge in that area, and so love to share that with you all. So, but this has been great, amazing. So it's great to hear from all these colleagues, and I have connections with both of these people on this panel, so it's really cool to get to do that.
Yeah, man. I mean, you never know where you will end up, or who you're connected with, or who you'll end up connected with. I think about one quick story. I guess it was last year. You know, I was invited to the Alabama Music Hall of Fame induction, and when I was over in Sheffield, I became very good friends with the songwriter Gary Baker. You know who he is. He's the one that wrote I Swear and a bunch of other great hits. But anyway, you know, here we are. He's actually getting inducted that night to the Hall of Fame. So he walks in the door with the Backstreet Boys. And they walk in and everybody's freaking out. And the first thing they do is they come up to me. Hey, Dr. Kirkman, what's going on? And say, you know, they're wanting to take pictures with me. And I'm like, dude, do you know who you are? And I look back to those moments when, you know, I was teaching his boys how to play drums in my band room. It's amazing how things just kind of come full circle and full fruition. So take advantage of those opportunities. That's all I got to say. And thank you, Ben, for inviting us and letting us be a part of the panel. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Great idea.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you all, Gabrielle, Evan, Dr. Kirkman, for being on the panel, but I think there's a lot of great information that the students got today, and I hope that they are benefited from it, because I sure have, and I appreciate you all's willingness to speak about some stuff. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.